We were still in the refugee camp. Alberto Ascari was the man for us at the time. A lot of the younger generation don't know much about, us. Yeah, I think Michael should be and very, very proud of his career to understand what they really want from us. Up to this point, everything they've asked, we've satisfied. A lot of weight put on the shoulders of Colton Herta.
Hello and welcome to the Stripping the Dipping podcast. You're joined by your usual co-host, Denzel Clarkson, and I have co-founder and great contributor to the show, F1 Blag, on this episode as well. And we have a superstar guest. He's one of the most successful, if not most successful driver in the history of motorsports. His accomplishments in motor racing are unrivaled. And I don't think you could name me many drivers that have won F1 World Championship, IndyCar Championships, Daytona 500, Indy 500, Pike Peak, NASCAR. You can name it all. And this gentleman, this legend that we have before us today, has succeeded in doing it all, and for me, revolutionized the way that we see sport and the way we judge success and performance as well. So it is the legendary Mario Andretti. Sir, how are you feeling today?
Wonderful, Denzel. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Mario, honestly. And whilst we're at it too, F1 Blag, did you want to give an introduction as well and, greet Mario too?
Yeah, I mean, I can't top that introduction, but Mario, it's a complete pleasure. This is F1 Blag. Your achievement is incredible, but actually, researching for today's episode, looking at your entire life story, like it's been an incredible sort of demonstration of positivity, strength, serial winning, and family. All things that go well beyond the realm of motorsport. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today.
Oh, thank you. Absolutely. You're very kind.
Thank you there, Mario. And yeah, just to start with the leading question to kick things off on today's podcast, what have you actually made of the new Formula One season so far? So we've got new cars, new regulations, a kind of reshuffle and resurgence of Ferrari to the top. And it's been intriguing just to see how things have played out with all the teams. So what have you made of the season so far?
I think you've said it all. A lot of things happening. Obviously, I think a lot of the new regulations have accomplished, I think, a great deal of what they were looking for as far as the raceability of the cars vis-a-vis one another. And of course, I think the resurgence of Ferrari coming back, being competitive, I think it's a big plus for Formula One. It always is. I mean, the vast Ferrari fan base, around the globe is very important, and that's been fed properly this season.
Absolutely there, Mario. I think we just lost you at the end, but hopefully you can still hear us too. Kind of leading on from that question, Mario, what would you say? Let's take things straight back to the beginning. What were your earliest and fondest childhood memories, in relation to racing, you and Aldo when you guys were quite young? Could you tell us just like where it all began and your passion for motor racing on your journey? Okay, I think we're having some technical difficulties just hearing Mario at the moment, but I'm sure we're going to get a reconnection very soon. But in the meantime, F1 Black it's crazy, isn't it? Like, it's him, it's the legend Mario Andretti.
Yeah, and I don't know how we're going to sequence episodes that we've been doing recently, but the last time I appeared, we were so close to accidentally revealing this surprise, and part of me just didn't believe it was going to happen. So it's a real privilege. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, anytime at F1 Black. And like I said in the intro, you've been one of the greatest contributors to this family, this kind of movement that we're trying to create here at Stripping the Dipping. And of course, as well, I see you as one of the founders because of your input and your contribution, the great question and rationale that you have, and just knowledge that you bring forth to the table as well. So yeah, I couldn't have done this episode on my own. I think I would have fainted, probably like I did almost when we had Raffaello Marcello a couple of weeks ago. And yes, just like you mentioned too, with Mario, there's so much to the man himself. Like,
Mm,
his success, his achievements, his records, even just in terms of his family and what they also went through as well, being like, experiencing World War II and being like Italian and having that kind of migration process of having to
mm,
choose a different place. And you would never think that somebody that's experienced just so much, like, I guess, arguably trauma, but also just like such an unconventional childhood could end up being one of the most pioneering and just most well-rounded champions. Because we talked about like Marcus Ericsson last week, and we said it's incredible and crazy that he finally won the Indy 500, and that's one of many motorsporting great achievements that not many live to see. So the fact that Mario has
mm.
actually achieved all of that and more, and it's not even just him, just the legacy and dynasty he's created. Because now you also have Michael Andretti, which basically founded and runs the Andretti Autosport program, and then you have Marco Andretti, which is the son of Michael, which is racing in the IndyCar program, and just so many series that the Andretti family they spread their wings out to with Formula E, Extreme E. They do some sports cars. They do
Mm.
Australian V8s. I can't think off the top of my head like another family dynasty that is just so well renowned and respected within the scene that we're a part of.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget his brother, his nephews, and his grandson as well. It's a real legacy. I mean, you talked about how much is won. The thing that I often think about when it relates to Lewis Hamilton, it relates to Rafael Nadal winning the French Open the other day. Like winning one thing is a lifetime achievement. So being a Grand Slam winner, an Indy 500 winner, whatever it is, it's like kind of something that's against all odds. And if you do it once, it's incredible. Mr. Andretti has returned.
It's nice to see Mario is reconnected back.
Yes.
Mario, can you hear us?
Yes, now I can. Yeah, I could hear you all along. It's just that you couldn't hear me. I assume.
Oh,
Oh no, such is technology sometimes. But we're so happy that you've been able to reconnect. And yeah, we started off the show just talking about just the state of Formula One and how the new regulations have really reshuffled things. As you correctly mentioned too, Ferrari seem to be quite strong with this year's car, the SF75. You've got a young and hungry driver in Charles Leclerc trying to make good of the package they have. But just generally in terms of motorsports, Mario, we wanted to kind of strip it straight back to, the origins of the Andretti family. And what was it like growing up, and what was your first encounter and first kind of like time where you're like, these cars here, I could really get into this. And racing cars in general could be me for the rest of my life. Like, could you give us insight into your fondest childhood memories in relation to racing?
Well, yes, I certainly can, and the thing that sometimes even baffles me, I baffle myself as to why I became so enamored with the sport at a very young age, along with my twin brother Aldo. We were still in the refugee camp in Italy after the war, and again, we just gravitated to the sport. Why? Because in the 50s, especially at the infancy of Formula One, Italy was such a large protagonist with Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo being part of it. And then current world champion Alberto Ascari became my absolute idol. And after witnessing the Italian Grand Prix in 1954, when we were 14 years of age, I mean, the mold was cast at that point. There was no plan B from there, even though it was absolutely the impossible dream. And when we came to America, family at age 15, 2 years later, we started with some other friends where we assembled 4 other buddies, and we started building a car, stock car, to race locally. And in 1959, at age 19, my career began. And again, I was just so fortunate in so many ways to have had a long career and be able to pursue my most ambitious goals, and loving every minute of it. As you can imagine, I have as much love for the sport today as I ever did. We just, as you mentioned earlier, as a family, we just live and breathe the sport, and it's in so many ways. And it's been so incredibly rewarding for me. We've had ups and downs with the family. Not everyone was as fortunate as, say, Michael and I. My brother was not as fortunate. Michael's brother, Jeff, was not as fortunate. But we were never deterred in any way. And again, we count our blessings, however, because with Michael, I'm very proud of what he's doing after coming out of the cockpit as a team owner. The way, as you say, spreading his wings and his ambitions now to go to the very top level of Formula One as well. So I'm very proud of that, as you could imagine.
Absolutely, Mario. And just even the earlier things you were saying there, it put a huge smile on my face. And it's so inspirational to us as just listeners and fans, because you showed and demonstrated that, the impossible dream, can be the American dream. It could be your dream if you put the work in, and ultimately you're willing to make the sacrifices, because there's must have been a tremendous amount of sacrifices. And in a segue to that, I'm actually going to hand over to F1 Blag just to caveat some of the points we made. And F1 Blag as well, at any time if you want to jump in or there's a point you want to raise as well, feel free to do so. The floor is yours as much as mine here.
Thank you. Yeah, and Mario, I'll ask this question sensitively because I don't know what your memories will be of this, but you talked about being in a refugee camp, and it was something I wasn't aware about your life, that where you grew up or where you were born is no longer formally part of Italy. And that, it was after World War II, caused some humanitarian issues. I mean, that for me feels like the start of the improbable tale. As a child in a refugee camp, can you, if it's not too traumatic, can you describe a little bit about what that was like? It's completely okay if you'd rather not, but I don't think people know about that.
Yeah, I don't have a problem whatsoever describing that part of my life. It's been, I think you said this earlier, very unconventional. When I was born, basically in 1940, when the World War II broke out, and we were basically right in the middle of it, if you will. And the region where I was born, which is the peninsula of Istria, was the extreme northeast part of Italy. After the war, since Italy lost the war, it was annexed. It was had to be given up. And Yugoslavia, hardline communism under Marshal Tito, was what occupied our region, and there was a choice that everyone had to make: either succumb to communism or leave. And the majority of the people in that region left. And became refugees. We became refugees in our own country. We were in Lucca in a refugee camp from 1948 to 55. My dad we had contact with a relative, an uncle on my mother's side that had immigrated to United States, much earlier. And he's at one point suggested to my father, why don't you just try to get some visas, apply for visas, and maybe come to the States. There might be a better future for the family, for all of you here. And he did so. My dad did so in 1952. 3 years later, visas came through. There was decision time. My dad said, "Okay, we're going to America for 5 years and maybe come back." So, this was the story. And but as far as the love for the sport, it all started while we were still in the refugee camp, actually, because we were at the age where we began to to understand a lot of things, and the sport was so prominent. Formula One, especially in Italy, that we became totally fascinated with it, my brother and I, and when we came to America, I think America gave us the opportunity really that we would probably never would have had in a period of our life, in Italy. So the land of opportunity here for us, and my ultimate dream to pursue Formula One also came true, obviously. But it was only because my formative years were here. I think I prepared fairly well for it. And then I got the great opportunities. Thank you to, specifically to Colin Chapman. Thank you to Mr. Ferrari, and so on.
Thank you. I mean, before I hand back to Dens, and we start to reflect on the fantastic motor racing career you've had, you talked about the 1954 Italian Grand Prix. I'm afraid to say I wasn't there, but I have had a look at the results, and the lineup is incredible. Fangio, Hawthorne, Collins, Moss, Ascari, who I think was near the front and retired. Did you have a favorite driver? Was it Ascari or was it someone else? Do you remember having that sort of passion for a particular driver?
Obviously, I loved, most all the protagonists, if you will. How could you not love Fangio, Moss, even, and Ascari, however, being Italian, being at the time current world champion, he was my absolute idol. That's the one that I wanted to, as a child, as a young lad, wanted to emulate. And then in 1954, he didn't have the strongest car. Mercedes was the dominating force there, but didn't matter. The way he fought and so on, his style and the way he was depicted by the press, all of that was captivating for us. And Alberto Ascari was the man for us at the time. But it's amazing that I've had some really great opportunities to do a lot of chatting with Fangio along the way when I was in Argentina and other times, and had a great friendship with Sterling Moss, where he was always amazed how much I knew about his career, because he said, "Oh, a lot of the younger generation don't know much about us," so they were both very impressed how much details I had about their careers, and so you could see I had plenty of inspirational characters during my formative years.
Absolutely. And, it's back to Dens. And yeah, it's amazing just to hear those stories as well, Mario, and just to see just the camaraderie back then too amongst the drivers, and just how close the teams and even drivers from different teams, just how they mingled with each other. But on the opposite side of it, like in racing, we usually talk about rivalries, and there's been some really historic ones over the years, from Schumacher to Hakkinen, Senna to Prost, Hunt to Lauda. Who would you say was your biggest rival, that gave you the biggest satisfaction of beating at the time? And what would you say was the hardest challenge you faced in your entire racing career?
Well, the challenges are always there. Obviously, if you're dreaming big, you're obviously going to go up against some of the best there is, and that's what makes you work harder. That's what makes you be better, and try to develop your own skills to be able to combat that. And when I came at the top level of here in the United States, the rival, if you will, was or the man that was set the standards was basically AJ Foyt, who was 5 years my senior and already a current champion. And so if I was going to excel in that series, that's who I, among others, and not alone, but I mean, he was the scale to go up against. And that there's something very healthy about that, quite honestly, about these rivalries. And my first experience in Formula One, when when I obviously was on pole, and who was next to me? Jackie Stewart. My first Formula One and second Formula One win. Who was second? Jackie Stewart. So something established like that gives you obviously gives you a lot of confidence. You feel, maybe I do belong here, and it's very encouraging, and that's what keeps you motivated to be better and better. And I was driven by the burning passion and love for driving, no question, and to having some of these satisfactions along the way just gave me more fire in my belly, to just go for it and experience all of it. Our sport is so rich of the top disciplines, and it's very this. Especially today, it's very common to just specialize, in one major discipline, which is fair enough. And for some reason, I was more curious in that. I derived so much satisfaction out of just trying the other levels, that I thought, okay, let's see what the curiosity drove me there more than anything else. But at the same time, you wanted to go there and see whether you could win, and somebody else, as I always say, in somebody else's sandbox, win at their own game. So, these are all the things that kept my career so, totally interesting and alive, and always looking forward to something different, something new, perhaps.
Absolutely. And Mario, it's like you have a crystal ball there because you kind of read the next point I was going to touch on, which I thought was going to be a great segue point. In Europe, I think that we're quite guilty, of looking at IndyCar as like a feeder series or a lesser series than Formula One, which I completely couldn't disagree with further. Just, I think IndyCar is just as competitive. And if not, just you can see the crop of talent, experience, sportsmanship in that series alone. There's some stars in there. My question to you, Mario, was just as yourself, how did your approach change? Going from series to series, like obviously Formula One and IndyCar. And would you say that there's one that's maybe more challenging than the other, like some people like to believe, or do you think maybe in their each respective ways that each one of those open wheel series or series in general of racing, they have their own kind of challenges and things that make them particularly unique?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, it's the challenges actually that you either shy away from it or you embrace it. And I, out of curiosity, I said, I wonder if I could do that, and adapt to what that particular discipline requires. So, and that in itself, gave me some satisfaction if I was able, at least I had a feel that I was able to put my arms around it. And there's, no better, measure than results, if you will. And so, yeah, no question that I always say that it's like an animal trainer. You can each different animal that can hurt you. They have a different character. You need to have a different approach, and a racing car is the same way. But to try to understand, the basics, the characteristics that are necessary for a race car, to be able to give you all the signals that you need as a driver, the balance factor, and then try to understand the dynamics, the aerodynamics, the suspension dynamics, and all of that is all important. And that's one thing that I always try very hard to put my nose into it and try to understand all of that, what the functions of suspension geometry is as far as obtaining balance and all of that. And that was very helpful for me to be able to adapt, to different series and all of that, and then try to do a decent job with it.
Let me build on that with a question, Mario, if that's okay. There's another Formula One driver that in your first Grand Prix, you were on pole position. And then in your last Grand Prix, I think with the Monza Grand Prix of 82, you were on pole position. So we've talked about the fact you've been successful across so many different series, but if you look at well, you sat in Formula One cars throughout that period, the change, it almost, I'm sure, felt like a different series. Could you describe, how those cars felt different from, Watkins Glen 68 through to Monza 82? What was the difference, and perhaps how did you adapt your style?
Well, it's an evolution. I've been part of an evolution for decades. From the '60s and '70s and '80s and so forth. And again, sure, I experienced Formula One in the late '60s and so forth, and then it got into the '70s, and then even by being out of Formula One from for 1 year, one season, where there was a huge change as far as the engine configurations, went from normally aspirated to turbocharged, which is a totally different way of approaching it as far as understanding the power curve and everything. And that's a part that I was very concerned when I was invited to substitute, for the misfortune of Didier Pironi in Monza for my last race there. But somehow you adapt, you adapt because you really want to, you want to do it so badly that somehow you figure out a way. And having had the various experiences over the decades, over the years, you somehow, I don't know, it's somehow kind of worked for me. I almost welcome something different thrown at me to see how I would react. And it wasn't always, it wasn't always very smooth. But at the same time, I just, by welcoming that challenge, that opportunity, it goes a long way by, just being able to get it done, quite honestly. It's just out of just a pure, I don't know, passion, if you will. I don't know how else to describe it.
Absolutely. And just to kind of touch on that as well, Mario, we highlighted this, that there's been a range and a plethora of different cars, different machinery that, you've become one with in your symmetry in going about racing and achieving all of these massive feats as well. And you've had the opportunity to work with some amazing revolutionary designers and, team principals as well, like Colin Chapman. If you had to go on a track day, Mario, and you had to pick one car and one circuit to do that with, what car would you pick and what circuit would you go for?
Well, I probably will go to Spa and give me a Mercedes, give me a Ferrari, or give me a Red Bull car. And I'll take either one, any one of those, whoever's will make the car at my disposal. I want to have a competitive car.
I like that response, Mario. And actually, it's a question that we'll circle back to later in this podcast. But I'm literally just with my hands in the air, really hoping that, through Zach Brown as well, we can see you in a McLaren, a modern McLaren, later this year as well for the United States Grand Prix at Austin, which we'll circle back to. But that would be incredible as well. And you mentioned Spa there too, one of the greatest, I think, driving circuit with the heights of Eau Rouge and this technical and twisty parts of Sector 3 as well. And it's a track that's been there for some time. So I absolutely agree with you there. And just to segue into a different topic here, Mario, we also touched on Andretti Autosport, and just how the name has spread its wings in terms of just the variety of different motor sport disciplines that Michael has managed to manage the brand and the team into, such as Extreme E. You've got Formula E. We have an IMSA team. We obviously have an IndyCar team, which no further things need to be added on that one because you've just got some great drivers in that stable too. But as his father, Mario, like, what was the transition for Michael going from a driver to a team owner, and what was the journey like for him in just that particular transition?
Well, for Michael, I think it was almost a natural transition because it seemed like he really, really embraced the business side of it. Yeah, I think Michael should be and very, very proud of his career as a racing driver. Uh, but you could see that he exited the cockpit when he was still at the top of his game, unlike me. I squeezed mine as much as I could, but Michael had still a lot to give as a driver, but he chose to step away and then just enter the world of team ownership. And again, this is something that he just seems to just relish that side of it, and you can see his ambition is such that he wants to spread his wings everywhere. And this is our business. This is what we love, and I'm so proud of that because I. And one thing I don't understand, and it's something very personal. I never had those ambitions, like to become a team owner or anything like that. All I wanted to do is drive. But I respect what Michael's love is for the sport because with this, it's everlasting. I mean, he looks to be, in this sort of to be an owner for the rest of his life, if you will. It's there's got no limit, and that's a beautiful thing for us. Like I said, it's we've lived and breathed and have motor racing in our blood, and what better way of going on than that? It gives me a reason to be that much closer to the sport, in every area. We're always, especially when you feel you have skin in the game, as they say here. So, and, on the driving side, on my brother's side, there's a third generation driving with Jared, and then Mark on my side. And who knows if there's going to be a fourth generation. So, the sport is our life, really. That's what it is. It's not something that's, that has any limitations, if you will.
That's so true, Mario, and I agree, and I echo your sentiments there as well in terms of this the dynasty, the legacy that you guys have created just in motorsport itself, and just it's amazing just to see how widespread the involvement of the Andretti family is, and all these different racing disciplines that we discussed too. And I know I have to be very cautious with how I phrase this next question because I know that there's still probably some negotiation going on in the background and a lot of things that maybe need to be tied down, Mario. But I wanted to come to you just for the little insight, if you could. Just we know we've been made aware that Michael is trying to make an entry into Formula One, which just as fans we would love to see, because obviously Formula One's gone through this kind of transitionary phase now where we have the American owners in Liberty Media. We're now seeing the addition of some more American races on the calendar too, which is great because there was a period of time, at least when I was growing up, in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had the Indianapolis 2005 event even, which, left like maybe a sour taste in the mouth of many. And now we're actually seeing a resurgence. Like, we've got the Miami Grand Prix, which you obviously went to. And then we've obviously got Austin, which has been a great, just amazing circuit with lots of flowing corners and the drivers love it. And then, of course, in the future as well, Las Vegas. But getting back to the crux of the question, we would love to see Andretti Autosport in Formula One. Just for the listeners at home there, Mario, like, has there been any news at all or any progression maybe in the talks of the entry going forward in the future? Is there anything at all you could comment at this stage?
Well, the project is going on absolutely. I mean, every single day we're on it, and just trying to satisfy, trying to understand what they really want from us. And I think up to this point, everything they've asked, we've satisfied. Where, I hear, some comments here and there that, we're probably not credible enough because, you have to understand, it's for the long term. No kidding. I mean, the plan that we're making is a minimum. I mean, right now you already have a plan of 10 years or more as far as the involvement. We're not rookies in this area. We may be rookies in Formula One, but not in the sport. And the sport is the sport, that we understand. We know the magnitude of that undertaking, and we're ready to do it. And just please accept us. That's all I can say. And like I said, we're working every possible angle, and tell us what we need to do. But Michael is on this thing every single day, but a lot of things are already in progress, just hoping and trying to think that, okay, that we're going to give it the official go ahead, because once that's done, they're already almost, a quarter of a way there already, because we want to be on the grid in 2024.
That would be amazing, Mario. And again, like, I'm so thankful for your honest response there. And it'll be a lot of reassurance to all of our listeners at home as well that it's still going, that we're still pushing to get an entry, because I can't see why not. The Andretti family, as we touched on before, has so much history, so much success, even in relation to Formula One. So for the FIA and, for those governing bodies to make it such an obstacle to trade, for teams and owner teams like yourself and obviously Michael to come in, and you guys have been serious, you guys have put your cards on the table, you guys have made your intentions very clear with them that you're serious about this project. It's frustrating, like I really wish that they would approach you guys with more open arms and an open heart, because as the fans, and I think what the people at the top, they need to recognize is that Formula One is a fan generated sport. It's not just the drivers and teams, but also the fans. And I think everybody, whether they're a Ferrari fan, Red Bull fan, McLaren fan, Mercedes fan, everybody would be rooting for Andretti Autosport, because it's just such an amazing name and legacy, as we touched on earlier. So I hope that they can see sense as well, Mario, and hopefully that the contractual talks behind the scene can continue to get done, and that they don't throw any more curveballs to make it unnecessarily difficult to enter. But then again, just from a complete this like dream coming true kind of element as well, Mario, I'd love to ask you this question. Should Andretti be granted, an entry spot into F1 for, 2024? And, you've got so many incredible and talented drivers in your stable, from the likes of your grandson, Marco Andretti, to title contenders in the IndyCar series, which are like Colton Herta and Alexander Rossi, and even to like an ex-Formula One driver, Roman Grosjean as well. Of all the names I've listed there, and if there's any that you could think of outside of that, I'd welcome you to mention them too. Who would you like to see pilot the cars for Andretti Autosport in Formula One?
Well, at the moment, there's no question that there's a lot of weight put on the shoulders of Colton Herta. I think he has proven to us, for quite a few years now, that number one, his clear, honest desire to be in Formula One, since he trained from age 15. He was in England. He was Formula 4 until the family could not afford it anymore. But anyway, I think what he has proven so far at his very young age, at some of the road races that he won purely on speed and so forth, and his attitude, I think that's where he deserves a good chance and opportunity to be there, and he will be the one to be, with Michael's team. Again, you just mentioned earlier about the FIA. We have met with the FIA, the new president, and so forth, and we've been in touch, with them in every way, and they seem to be very supportive of this idea. I think right now it's a lot of it is in the hands of the teams, and it seems like the Liberty Media is depending so much on what the teams want to decide whether they want or not. I don't know if that's good or bad, but nevertheless, going back to that, I definitely feel that they should try to understand that how serious the approach is from Michael's side, from Andretti Global, to get this thing done and put every absolute effort into it. I mean, it's a huge investment into Formula One, which from a business side, it should be welcomed. So that's where we are. But as far as the talents, going back to that question, Michael, we have spoken with the FIA. He's the team. They're willing to, they want to be part of the involvement is to field Formula 3, Formula 2 teams, so you could bring talents in and cultivate the talents like he's done even in Indy cars and US 2000 and the Indy Lights and so forth, and how he's benefited from that, and always to have the opportunity of some American young lads that really would have the passion to come over. There's still some out there for sure, but this would be a good positive flow to have the talent to be able to train possibly for Formula One in that area. So the commitment from our side is huge in every way, and it was spelled out clearly to the FIA, and they embraced the idea for sure.
Thanks, Mario. And I don't think anyone doubts the sincerity and seriousness of your proposed commitment to Formula One. And you talking about feeder series is interesting, because when Denz was talking about potential drivers, I had in the back of my head Kyle Kirkwood, who of course dominated the Indy Light Series last season, and you talked about AJ Foyt being your perhaps one of your rivals. Or benchmark when you arrived in sort of single-seater US motorsport. Of course, you've given Kyle Kirkwood to AJ Foyt for this season of IndyCar. So we wish you your son and your family every luck, every piece of luck here. There's no shortage of great drivers, and we really hope this materializes. What we did hear a little earlier from Denz, and you acknowledged it, is I think through Zach Brown, you're likely to drive a modern McLaren F1 car around in Austin, I think later in the year. I hope that's right. If not, we'll manifest it into reality. But when we talk about you adapting series to series, technical innovation to technical innovation, there are some drivers that switch teams and all of a sudden, maybe it takes them a bit of time to get to grips with the new car or the new regulations. And, with your ties or your links with Zach Brown, of course, some of the news recently has been about Daniel Ricciardo and how he's doing and his comparison with Lando Norris. Clearly, you're not talking to Daniel every day, coaching him through this, but do you have a sense of why, Daniel or any driver might switch teams or switch regulations and not immediately hit the same heights that they were before? Do you have any insight into that, either as a driver or through your knowledge of McLaren?
Well, if I had a clear insight into that, I would bottle it and sell it. This is something that's very personal. From different individuals react to different aspects of what they expect or what the feeling must be to feel confident and comfortable. So it's strictly a personal thing, in my opinion. That's all it can be. And why do some drivers adapt easier than others? To go back to what was very useful to me was to do quite a bit of sports car racing as much as possible, starting back in 1966, whereby in sports cars, you need to really adapt to the machine. Not always you will be able to set it up to your liking, because you have one partner, and now you have up to four partners, in the car. And you have to pretty much adapt to a general setup and make the best of it. And I think that teaches you a lot, to be able to adapt to something that maybe is not exactly the way you want. And so there's so many elements to it. I wish there was a simple answer, or something that you could totally understand and then relate to someone. Oh yeah, if you do this and this and that, you got it made. No, it's like I said, it's a lot more complicated than that. And to me, it's almost impossible to explain, quite honestly.
I mean, in the over-engineered world of modern motorsport, I think that it sounds from you that a lot of it comes down to the personal, the instinctive, and your own sort of what's going on inside your own body. So that's a fascinating insight.
Exactly.
And you talked about it being personal. You talked about setting up the car. I mean, again, maybe I've been left with the sort of slightly traumatic questions here, but of course, when you started in single-seater motorsport, the element of danger was much higher. And I'm sure that there were members of your cohort that, there's a proportion that you just would never see again. And safety standards have improved. I just wonder if, throughout, maybe you noticed it through your career, whether there was a change in attitude or instinct, given that safety levels had improved. And do you have any sort of thoughts on, how safe motorsport is now and the modern, maybe that's affected modern driving? Any thoughts on that, Mario?
Well, I think deep down, knowing that you have more protection and so forth, obviously it gives you a tendency to let your hair down a little bit more, maybe take some more risks, if you will, you wheel to wheel, bang some wheels or whatever. But for myself, even going through the decades, I just because the roll bar was lower than the top of my head, it doesn't mean that I left something on the table. I think you just go out there. I always try to take every 100% out of the car, no matter what. The evolution of safety was slow coming, but it was very welcomed. And I think ultimately, even I don't think I drove any harder when I had on a dirt car, when I had just a regular single roll bar, or when I had a cage on top of my head. That's something that I don't know, that for me anyway, didn't make much difference. So again, some drivers may think, okay, now we have the halo, now I can really go balls out and just do maybe stupid things and get away with it. I don't know what the mentality is of different drivers. And it did not phase my style of driving, but did I welcome safety features in a car and on the circuit? You're darn right, because I wanted to live another day, if something happened to me. So, something happened, mechanically, or I made a terrible mistake. So the safety aspect of our sport is something that certifies a future, for it. I always said it a million times that I don't think our sport would have survived unless it would have really seriously dealt with the safety aspect that we're enjoying today. Because I always say when the sport is as commercial as it is today, you have companies spending millions of dollars, to be part of a team. They don't want to go to funerals, they want to celebrate. So I don't think the future of the sport would have been very healthy otherwise. So the sport is at a good place today because of the safety aspect of it. And wonderful for the drivers, because they have in some of my decades, the best chance that I potentially had, percentage-wise, to end my career, finish my career on my own terms, would have maybe 25 to 30% at most. Now it's probably 95.8%. So 99.8%. So that's a beautiful thing to have.
Yeah, thanks for that sort of very open and candid answer. And the improvements of safety clearly are what everyone has demanded, the fans, after all of the various issues and tragedies that you will have experienced very close up. Which kind of brings us to modern day. And if you don't mind me being a little bit more flippant with a shorter question, and I know you've got friends in the paddock, so I expect you might sit on the fence on this one. 2022 Formula One World Champion, who do you have your imaginary money on?
I can't even say yet. I mean, it's I don't want to express it one way or another, because I have a wide appreciation for a lot of the talents out there, and certainly, my private, sense, I have, some special ones that I would probably lean toward, but I stayed as neutral as possible, openly. So you're not going to get this answer very completely. But I think the protagonists are out there right now. Any one of those would fit very well into, what my desires would be, quite honestly.
Brilliant. And let me ask you another flippant question, because we often, think of things from one direction. Who from the US could succeed in Europe or in Formula One? But perhaps looking at the Formula One grid, could you tell us who you think, based on driving style or personality, whatever it is, who you think has it in them to go over stateside and really thrive in IndyCar?
Well, I think any one of the drivers out there could do it, depending on what their desires are. It's all about what your own ambitions are. I mean, as far as anyone that can drive, say, a Formula One car, to the limit, can exist anywhere else in the sport, quite honestly. I don't think there's any limit there. The only limit is that whatever is a personal ambition. That's the only limit. So I think it's a vice versa. Like a top IndyCar driver, if they if they had a passion of being in Formula One, I think they would succeed. It's up to the individual, when it's not that you're so incredibly superior by being able to drive a Formula One versus something else. I mean, I've tried it all you said different times, but you know what, as much as things are different today, they're really the same in so many ways from a human standpoint. It's all of it depends on the individual. Like some American drivers, why don't we have too many American drivers that really express the passion to be in Formula One? Why? Because this is the only country on the planet that can provide a full career, proud career, fulfilled career just by staying here. Because you have the series like IndyCar, you have NASCAR, you have IMSA and so forth. And you always say you almost don't need a passport, if you will. But nevertheless, it's still the individual. That's why I'm looking at Colton Herta, because he expresses himself as vividly as any American driver that I've heard before, how much he wants to be there. And to me, when Michael was going to was in the process of buying Sauber, Colton was there for a week there on a simulator, and immediately he was quicker than Giovinazzi and Kimi Räikkönen. Like in the first couple of days. So he adapts quickly, and he has the right attitude, and that's what it takes.
Thank you so much for that answer. And now I want to see Colton Herta and Andretti Autosport in F1 more than ever. So you're really whetting our appetite. I think final sort of set of questions from me, and thank you so much for your time. It's been a real pleasure. You talk so much about how much of this is in your head and in your heart, about sort of passion and challenge and curiosity for detail and aspiring against the benchmark, whoever that is. Could you tell us sort of what's your? You seem like someone that still has a dream. What is what? You've achieved so much, but what is your motorsport dream? You mentioned driving a Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes around Spa. We'll definitely will that into being. but yeah, what do you have a dream there of motorsport still?
Well, of course I do. I mean, it's like I said. I think I want to maintain a strong legacy in the sport, and it's all handed down to the next generation. The dream is to see my son Michael and whoever else of our family would be involved, to exploit the sport to the maximum and derive, all the ultimate satisfactions that could be derived from that. That's my dream, to stay in it. And the closer they are, the more they expand their activities. The closer I will be, and the more reason I will have to stay close to the sport myself.
Thank you. And I think you've already developed a legacy. There's no doubt in that. And the fact you're still passionate as a serial winner to see that legacy grow and expand. And we've talked about Formula One as the name Andretti on the paddock and hopefully on the podium as well. Before we close, Mr. Andretti, is there anything you want to sort of say to the millions of fans out there that have followed you throughout your career? Any message you want to leave us with? And are you working on a project that you might want them to be aware of, or anything they should look out for?
Oh yes, we're working on a project. Formula One project.
Boom.
Please support us. Please support us. That's my plea.
You have our support, sir, and I think that is echoed across F1 fans, Hamilton, Team LH, be they Max Verstappen or whoever they are. They want to see Andretti in F1, and we really hope you get there and get there soon.
This is the bonus section of the podcast for those that are listening. And yeah, there's just a few more questions, Mario. So let's get into some of those. So the first one that we've had in from a fan, Mario, I mean, they've mentioned, that you've been there as a driver. You've also been there as a father, to Michael and the rest of the family too. What advice would you have there for the young parents that, their kids are looking to get into motor racing and probably going through karts and stuff like that as well? What advice would you give to those parents, for example?
Well, let the kids follow their dreams. If you see clear sincerity in their desires, why not? Just help them pave the way. Nothing is easy, but today there's so many systems, farm systems, as you said, that you can get involved in and give the opportunity to these young individuals. And again, I'm sure as a parent, sometimes you can detect how strong the wishes are. But I always say, to any young person that comes to me, I always say, just follow your dreams. That's all I can say.
It's true, Mario, and I think just great advice as well, because we get caught up sometimes thinking, oh, I can't do this, or I'll never be good enough to do this. But until you try and until you put your best foot forward and you try to do it, you don't know what's on the other side. And again, I imagine even for you, if somebody had told you, Mario, that you're going to be the most historical racing driver of all time and have the widest range of accolades when you were younger, you'd have been like, I believe I can do it, but how will it happen? And it's through your dedication, your hard work, and just your mentality and drive that you've made, all of these things come true. So I think really great advice and nuggets of inspiration there for those listening. So I'll move to the next fan question we've got, which is and I know what your answer is going to be to this as well, Mario, but just generally speaking, surely there must be a race or even a weekend where you look back on it and you're like, wow, that was really incredible, or it's like a really favorite moment or a happy period in time. Could you share maybe one of those with us?
Oh yes, that's easy. As I mentioned earlier, that what really cemented, our dreams and our approach, and the willpower to pursue the sport was Monza. When we saw the first race, and can you imagine if I could have ever dreamt that that's where that I was going to win the Grand Prix of Monza and win the 1,000-kilometer of Monza and clinch the world championship in Monza. You know what I mean? Who else could really appreciate those moments but myself? And so that's easy. Again, you always look at some of the premier events in your life. Okay, what's best known, the Indy 500, Daytona 500, Le Mans, and all of that. But
Podiums with your family.
yeah, I mean, and just events that happen with my family. For instance, Michael and I in Indy cars, we were on podium 15 times. In an IndyCar race, we were first and second 5 times. We were on the front row of an IndyCar race 10 times. I didn't like that 5, 10, and 15. And
Perfect
that's a fact.
symmetry.
Yes, I mean, give you another event. Pocono in 1986, Pocono 500 IndyCars. There was a supporting event for that race, which was like Formula 2 or Indy Lights. And my younger son, Jeff, was on pole for that race, and he won that race, the supporting race. Michael was on pole for the 500, and I won the 500. Between the three of us, we cleaned house. We had an Andretti podium in 1991 in Milwaukee, when Michael was first, my nephew John was second, I was third. Things like that. We look back, and there are other moments. 1991, 92, 4 members of our family all qualify for the Indy 500, which never happened before or since. So when I go back, and there's more, but when I go back and see how, rewarding the sport has been to us as a family in so many ways, and with all the ups and downs, it's that's it. I mean, I could never ask for anything more for my life than that.
I could definitely agree with you there, Mario. And again, it's just amazing when you sit down and you think about that, especially the Pocono 500 event too, or
Yeah.
that race week. Just basically the entire family just living up to its name and legacy, and creating those achievements as well, from Jeff, to Michael, to you, to everyone that's in the family. It's such a feel good story, and you have like huge companies like Mercedes and Ferrari, and that's kind of the corporate world. But then when I look at people like you, Mario, just like, it reminds me that it is possible, and if you work hard enough and you have like a great family around you too, that you can achieve so much more together and in arms as well. So I was
Absolutely.
really happy. I was so happy to kind of hear that story too, and just that revelation. And this question, Mario, it's not from me, by the way. It's from our owner, Georgina. So I said to her, if Mario punches me through the screen through this, I'm blaming you. Georgina's question, Mario, was pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No pineapple on pizza.
I agree
Absolutely.
with you. Yeah, I don't really think that's a great combination either, to be
Don't
honest,
serve,
Mario.
don't serve me pineapple on pizza. That's all I can say.
Exactly. Well, you guys heard it here first. And Mario, just the final question, and also just again, thank you a million for your time. It's been amazing just to catch up with you, to hear your stories, to get an update as well into the life of what Michael's doing with the F1 entry. We really pray. As fans, as listeners, as supporters, regardless of like the teams that we support, that this is a goal that comes to fruition and that it can materialize and manifest itself into something incredible, because we all know it has the potential to as well. So the last question, Mario, was we would love to re-invite you again on the show again when you're free, and I'm sure your personal assistants can set that up at some stage. But the question really was, if we invited you, would you be happy to return on the show again? And is there potential maybe we could get Michael in one day too?
Well, I'm of course. I've yeah. You're welcome to invite me, and I'm sure Michael will do the same. Just go through his channels, and I'm sure it can all be accomplished.
Oh, that's so heartwarming to hear as well, Mario. And just thank you to you, thank you for your assistant as well for like setting this up and just your time, because I feel that's the most priceless thing. And even in just the time we've had with you, there's been so many things that our listeners can take away, they can learn, they can relate to, they can use in their own lives, not even just in motor racing, but just life in general, in their way they apply themselves to do things. And their mindset, because we always say with Formula One, you have to have the right car, you have to have the right team, but it's also a psychological thing too, having the right mentality, the right attitude towards
No
achieving your
question.
goals. And without even like having to go into it, just like you've been such an inspiration and a legend to us all, Mario. So, huge thank you to you. And as F1 Black said earlier as well, in the main segment of the show, if you guys are listening to this, please make sure that you share, you share with your platform and communities respectively. And of course, as well, that you go over to the Andretti Autosport website and the social media handles too, and you give them as much support as well, and also Mr. Reed, I think Georgina is telling me as well, huge shout out to him as Mario Andretti's publicist as well for making this possible. And it really means so much to us, honestly, Mario. We're wishing well for you, we're wishing well for Michael and the entire family, and we can't wait, we really cannot wait, to see the future of the Andretti Autosport legacy and just the brand, and just to see them in all the high places in sport where it belongs.
I appreciate that very much indeed, and I'm
Thank you so
sure we'll
much.
visit again. Yes, I look forward to that.
Oh, thank you so much, Mario. Thank you. And guys, it's been your usual co-host, Denzel Clarkson.
I've been F1 Black. Thank you, everyone that's listened in. Please leave a 5-star. There's not an episode that you're going to give a 5-star rating for. It must be this one. Leave a 5-star rating wherever you listen to us on the podcast network.
We hope that you're keeping well in the world. And as always, thank you for your support. Thank you for supporting this podcast, of course. And until next time, we will catch you guys again very soon. But in the meantime, have a great week. Enjoy the Formula One. I don't think we have any IndyCar this week, but we shall have IndyCar in the next coming weeks. And of course, it's the legendary Le Mans 24 Hours as well. I almost let that one slide under the radar too. So make sure that you check that out at some stage of the upcoming week too. But until you hear from us again,
this is Stripping the Dipping. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Bye.